we're right here in the middle of the conversation. This guy, Robert, and I'm Susan. This is the Daily Dose of Dopamine. And we were talking about something Robert heard this morning. It's a single line:
Hmm.
leave it at the door or you're dead. Right.
That's
And
the
we
one.
had two slightly different interpretations, which to me both work. They're both really
Yep.
valuable and descriptive of what we do.
Yep.
So I know you don't want to repeat everything we just said in the last dose, but summarize yours.
Well, it's a jumping off point. Put it that way. That basically it allows you to get in and go, right? So I'm good with that. By being present, you can do what you need to do.
Yes, and in my interpretation was also about being present in that it's asking you to fully invest in what you're doing and don't not do it. Don't leave half of what you might have to
Right.
bring.
And
Or
that's a
you're
very conscious act, what you just said, right?
yes.
And it relates to, I was going to pull one more line here, and this came from our dear friend Annie Wiseman. Shout out to her again. Which is again because it's so important. They're training doctors was the framework of what they're doing there. And we talk a lot about the doctor-patient relationship. And hey, yours truly is about to become a doctor. And they talked about the difficulty of medical school, which again, I'm going to a PhD program, not an MD program. However, and I've heard this in different ways, she said that when she goes to her class, she is trying to help people be human while they become doctors.
My goodness.
Talk to me about that. That struck you. So talk to me about that.
It's heartbreaking that we're not starting there. But
Right?
having been married to someone who went through medical school when he was going through medical school and running the volunteer program in the hospital at the same time, and we had all these college kids at the University of Chicago who wanted to pursue a career in medicine, and so they wanted to volunteer in the hospital and learn what it was like. And my job was to train them and stuff, and they were all about power and impressing, and I don't know, they weren't getting the human part, except for the ones that wanted to work in the pediatrics or the gynecology wings,
Interesting.
obstetrics and gynecology and pediatrics. Those were warm-hearted people. You felt their humanity. But man, these kids that wanted to work in the emergency room where the action was, they were the ones that were going to, save the world. But yeah, and it was really sad, Robert, but Chip counseled me to counsel these kids to understand that being a physician is very much like being a service mechanic. That that it's the same job every day, and you need to recognize that it's not this dream thing where you're going to be saving humanity. And it is really heartbreaking that his education had led him to that place.
I
That
agree. That is because, and I get it from an efficiency standpoint, right?
yeah,
I understand what they're trying to do. And at the same time, like you said, what's getting left out every time is that person who is not the same thing every day, who is not the same as your last patient. Every person is a person.
absolutely, absolutely. It's we are, and it's not necessarily treated that way, even now.
It sounds simple, and yet fundamentally and systematically, there are many people from a power perspective in position that are still training that way, that are saying it's that way because it always has been, or it's the right thing to do. And it makes me think of the Shirley Jackson story, The Lottery. You familiar with that one?
I don't think so.
The story of ritual without meaning. And every year, this little town would pick one person, and that person would get stoned to death. They would throw rocks at that individual. Why? Because it's what we've always done.
Oh my goodness.
And it basically, you don't even realize it's happening as it's happening. And then they're like, yeah, and, it was alluded in some fashion to it satisfies the gods, whatever it does. But that's the terror of
Yeah,
of becoming an automaton rather than a human being.
I'm thinking, feeling.
Feeling,
Whoa.
yes.
Ooh, wow. So that's what? That's a story?
Short story by Shirley Jackson. You can find it online. I highly recommend it. It's something I hold on to all the time. The value of literature to teach us humanity and remind us of where we've gotten caught in a story loop. And really the value of horror as a genre. That's something we should talk about, maybe on our next Daily Dose.